What's going on, everyone? Welcome into another Forward Progress. It's week 5, Best Bets edition here on the Forward Progress YouTube channel, part of the Hammer Betting Network, and presented by Fanduel. I'm Rob Pizzola, here alongside Suma, Judah, and Hitman, returning from his 1-week ban of the channel. We tried to change things up last week, said get this loser out of here. Maybe we'll pick some winners, and that didn't happen. I thought that was going to be the big break that we needed to turn things around on best bets, but wasn't great. Only I won my best bet last week with the Buccaneers. Looking at the leaderboard for the season, it's real sad out there. It's sad, but you know what, Hitman? At least not a loss last week, and that's important as well. Yeah, hopefully we can pick it up. 3 wins on the year. Same show as always. We're covering 4 games on today's show, ones that we have stronger opinions on. We'll give out a futures bet that's available that we like heading into next week. And of course, we'll end the show with a best/worst bet from each of us. I will say, Judah, had Judah just gone like non-alt spreads this year so far, he'd be 2-2 as well. And he'd be tied at the top. But he's looking for the big paydays. Maybe a little bit of greed is hurting this team right now. Anyone got anything to say for themselves, or that's it? Like, we're just going to do the silence. Shame of
yeah, I'm not in last for once, so somebody else address the room.
Yeah, look, I got no words. We've been burned. I've been greedy, and I'm going to do it again.
All right.
I will be a backwards hat kind of guy until we turn this around.
Maybe it's the hat. So maybe you're like 0-4 winless since wearing a hat on the show. Maybe you just need to show that. I mean, I don't even know what you look like with hair, honestly. I think you've been wearing a hat so frequently. But yeah, all right, here we go. We'll get into it. I see the usual people in the chat. Good to see you, Dan. I know you're pumping some iron at the gym right now. Ryan, Sam, Patrick, a lot of usual suspects. E-Colt, what's up? Big fan of the old E-Colt. Let's start this off with the early game on Sunday. It's the Jets hoping to get back on track. They're taking on the Vikings at the home of the Tottenham Hotspur. The Vikings season, I mean, I remember Alex Moretto messaging me on the side when J.J. McCarthy got hurt before the year, but a season-ending injury to him led to Sam Darnold starting. He's off to the best start of his career. He's continuing his revenge tour this week against the team that drafted him. The Jets coming off a very embarrassing loss, 10-9 to the Broncos. The offense was the worst it looked all season. Aaron Rodgers dealing with some knee swelling right now. That's being talked about going into this as well. So current market at FanDuel for this game is the Minnesota Vikings -2.5, -120. So pushing out towards 3. It's pretty much been one-way action since this game opened. Total in the game is 40.5, juiced towards the under here. Suma, you're our resident Jets fan, here at Forward Progress. What do you make of the matchup for the Jets this week?
Well, I don't know if you guys follow Jets Twitter since Sunday, but that is an absolutely toxic place. Robert Saleh and Nathaniel Hackett are basically the enemy number 1 in the state of New York right now. Absolutely going crazy, that fan base. And to be honest, I think there were a lot of issues popping up against Denver that might be quite similar when they face the Vikings. I'm not saying that it's exactly the same kind of defense, because it's virtually impossible to copy Brian Flores' defense, but Denver is blitzing at almost a 50% rate right now, and they're doing lots of funky stuff up front. And the Jets O-line was consistently confused. They had linebackers dropping out, then delayed blitzes sending with them and stuff like that. And the Jets O-line really didn't know how to handle it. The run game for the Jets is pretty vanilla. Denver was almost all over every play in that game. And some people blamed the rain for it. I don't think that it was any issue for Aaron Rodgers. It was an issue for Bo Nix, if all. And it really was crazy to see that this offensive line that has a few intriguing names now without Morgan Moses, Olo Fasciano at right tackle, who got terribly beaten a few times. And this is very concerning when you play against the Vikings defense that is even doing more weird stuff up front. And I'm not sure that Nathaniel Hackett has the right answers for it. This offense is basically, we run all the passing plays that Aaron Rodgers likes, and we will just sprinkle some vanilla runs on 2nd and 9, 2nd and 10 into it. And this offense doesn't really feel cohesive. Not sure what the plan is to fix it in a single week. So that's super concerning to me when it goes against the Vikings defense. I don't have a strong opinion on the game. My number is pretty much exactly on Fanduel market right now, just a tad below 3. But I'm really, really concerned about the Jets offense going into this matchup. And on the other side, Vikings offense has been absolutely incredible. I think you will probably get like 1 or 2 dumb plays by Sam Darnold every game, like he did against the Packers. But overall, this offense has been playing lights out. This will be a tough task against the Jets, who are largely healthy. The problem was that last week, Denver had an easy solution up front. It didn't turn it into production because Bo Nix really stank in the rain. But they doubled Quinnen Williams, and then they chipped Will McDonald. And then that was basically enough to take out the pass rush for most of the game. It was just that Jets DBs were all over those routes, and Bo Nix couldn't really throw accurate passes like 10 or 15 yards downfield. But I think that Vikings probably have the horses to put together a few scoring drives. And then it really depends on whether the Jets can come out with something that Brian Flores is not prepared for. And I have some doubts that that will be the case.
Hitman, this game's interesting in particular because it's one of several games in week 5 in the NFL where there's been a dramatic shift in the market from what we would have expected going into the year. And I think a lot of people who are still on priors for these teams may have trouble getting to this number on a neutral field because essentially it's implying that the Vikings are almost 3 points better than the Jets on a neutral field. Where do you stand on this game now after we've seen 4 games out of each of these teams? Are you willing to buy into Minnesota, or maybe on the other side of things, buy into the fact that maybe the Jets aren't as good as people thought they were going into the year?
Yeah, I kind of just want to regurgitate like a lot of the opinions that Suma had. The only team that blitzes heavier than the Minnesota Vikings this year are the Denver Broncos. They blitzed Aaron Rodgers 43% of the time, and against the blitz, Rodgers had a negative 0.3 EPA per play, 5 yards per pass attempt. I know there's a bunch of talk now about, like, could Rodgers be legitimately banged up, or is it just the usual after he loses a game? He complains that he's hurt and cries about it. But he took 14 hits and 5 sacks overall against that Broncos blitz. And now you're facing just a more juiced up version, better version of a blitz heavy team in the Minnesota Vikings. I said from the start of the year that I kind of thought this Jets roster was just a little bit overrated. Like, you even look at the weapons in the pass game, like Mike Williams is still coming back from that injury. Alan Lazard, any production he has, I'm just going to give credit to Rodgers because I'm not a big Lazard wide receiver 2 guy. And Garrett Wilson was the guy coming into this year in the wide receivers and tight ends. And he's been struggling so far this year to get on the same page with Rodgers. The Vikings have a 50+57 scoring margin. They've led by double digits for over 50% of their snaps this season. The next best team is 37%, and that is against a schedule that has included 3 teams that are clearly better than the Jets in Houston, San Francisco, and Green Bay. Plus, there's a big coaching mismatch in this game. Like Nathaniel Hackett against Brian. I know Aaron Rodgers is probably the offensive coordinator of the Jets, but Nathaniel Hackett against Brian Flores and O'Connell against Robert Saleh. Like, I favor Minnesota in that department. With all that said, market ratings probably have this game pick 'em if it's played last week.
Yeah,
we're at the point where we're at -2.5, -120. It's just a little bit of a lean towards Minnesota.
Got it. Judah, on your end, this is obviously a neutral site game. I've heard some stuff about the pitch that they're playing on at Tottenham, that, which team might travel better. I think all these things are stuff that you have to account for when you got, a game overseas. But from the X's and O's in this game in particular, the Jets have really struggled when Rodgers has been under pressure this year. They're facing a team that can generate pressure. Do you expect to see any differences out of the Jets this week? Or do you think that they're kind of an offense that we know who they are at this point?
Yeah, I think that we don't know so much about the Jets offense, both in terms of, I think, like Garrett Wilson in particular, in games where they needed to pass, has had some like very difficult matchups. And now obviously if he's the type of receiver who can win out, that shouldn't matter. But I do think, and maybe I'm missing a team here, there's perhaps no bigger of a gap between the wide receiver 1 of a team and a wide receiver 2 of a team. And like, they have not gotten Garrett Wilson going. And I think this is a great spot to do it. No one really on the Vikings is going to shadow or can shadow. And I think that like actually getting Garrett Wilson going will certainly benefit the Jets offense. And the other thing I'll say of just like on the Jets side here, a lot of what Brian Flores can do on the scheming of pressure is like in disguising where the blitz is coming from and where it's not. And traditionally, this is precisely the area where Aaron Rodgers has been at his best. I think even like we can see this as fans watching games of like Rodgers getting up to the line in 20 seconds, diagnosing the pressure, and he's actually won in that way. So I'm curious more so than anything else. It's not something I'm willing to bet on to see how he handles the pressure. But the last thing I'll say on this game, and this is not something we touched on, is on the other side of the ball, we have not seen Minnesota play a defense even close to the caliber of the Jets, a team that is second in pressure rate. Sam Darnold obviously has some very drastic splits, pressure versus not. And I think that like we should not take that for granted. If the sample size of plays where Sam Darnold is in scheme, staying in the structure, is 70% as it's been so far this season, like sure, they can absolutely have a ton of success. If that sample goes to 60%, 55%, which is certainly a possibility in a game against the Jets defense, I think we can see some differing results here. So I'd be a little bit cautious on really just like going all in on the Vikings, especially how much of their success has been schematic and how much of that has to do with the matchups they faced, and they haven't really played a particularly great defense yet.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point that you make there. I'm curious to see whether the Jets do anything different offensively in terms of pushing the pace a little bit more. They've played very slow so far this year. It's been methodical, get to the line of scrimmage, let the clock bleed. I think that if you want to try to keep the Brian Flores defense a little bit off of their game and get them out of their comfort zone, it would be in the best interest of the Jets to play fast. It feels like Aaron Rodgers wants to do that, but the team doesn't. I don't know what's going to win out, but potentially an in-game look there. If I see the Jets offense playing fast, I probably will click the Jets and or the over in real time, because I think that could be a recipe to success for them. Conversely, they're going to come out, they're going to bleed the clock again, run it down. I really have no interest in this offense. I think that gives Minnesota a lot of time to have their pass rushers rest, to dial up those blitzes. So I think it's really a fascinating game because we've come a long way on both of these teams. Don't really know what I'm going to do with it, but I think it could provide some good in-game looks for people on Sunday morning. Before we get into our second game here, football's in full swing. There's no better place to get in on the NFL action than Fanduel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets. Just place any $5 bet. You'll get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. You can use your bets on spreads, props, live bets, including the to catch a pass market that's new, over-unders, so much more. I personally love betting, especially in-game with FanDuel. The offering is really good. It's easy to navigate, easy to find bets quickly in real time. So visit FanDuel.com/forward-progress. Download America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/forward-progress. You must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in DC. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit is required. Bonus is issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms of these deals at sportsbook.com/wagers. sportsbook.fanduel.com. And of course, if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG, 1-888-789-777 or ccpg.org/chat if you're in Connecticut, mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. And if you're in New York, 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY if you are in New York. We take responsible gaming very seriously here on Forward Progress. Bet within your bankroll at all times. That includes if you're trying to fade us, by the way. Bet within your bankroll still. Game number 2. I think this, I don't know if this is every week, maybe at least 4 weeks of the season. We've had the Panthers here as a game that we've had an opinion on. They picked up a win in week 3, but they fell back into the loss column against the Bengals in week 4. They're now road underdogs against Caleb Williams and the Bears. They picked up a win at home against the Rams last Sunday. Box score metrics would maybe indicate that they were a little bit lucky in that game, but Caleb Williams has been getting better as the season has gone on. Facing Andy Dalton here, who has taken the starting job for the Carolina Panthers. Taking a look at market here in this one, and we got Chicago back out to -4.5, -105 at FanDuel at the moment. Total in the game is 41.5. Juice towards the over. If you were an under better, it looks like FanDuel has the best price in market right now. And again, we see some disparity from book to book. Carolina 4.5 -115, a pretty solid number at FanDuel if you were looking to bet Carolina in this game. Hitman, let's start with you here. Side, total, anything that you like is a look for this one.
Not a super strong opinion, but would slightly lean towards Carolina, especially at that 4.5 at FanDuel right now. So obviously it's been against a pretty weak strength of schedule the past 2 weeks, but since Andy Dalton took over, there's a Panthers offense that's 7th in EPA per play. A lot of it is how quick he's throwing, but Carolina has allowed a league low pressure rate in his 2 starts this year. And the game against Cincinnati, Carolina had a better success rate that game than Cincinnati. They got 0 points on a 1st and goal from the 2 on the opening drive. They allowed a 16-yard touchdown drive after an interception. I felt like Carolina, they should have lost that game, but losing by 10 was just a little bit deceiving. The defensive injuries that they have, they're super concerning. This is arguably the league's worst defense, but Chicago just played another team last week that's was in the conversation for one of the worst defenses in the league, and they had 264 yards of offense. There was a Rams turnover that led to a 16-yard Bears touchdown drive, and the Rams were just constantly settling for field goals in that game. So I know Chicago has won by margin technically twice this year, where they covered against Tennessee, they covered against the Rams. I felt like both those games, you could argue that there was a lot of positive variance, and they were almost just as likely to lose those games outright as they were to cover those games. Mm-hmm. So for me, it just comes down to a hard time trusting Caleb Williams right now with this Bears offense to win by 5 points or greater.
Yeah, seems like a lot of people in the chat are agreeing with you. Some comments about what have the Bears done to be warranted of getting this price tag. Listen, that 4.5, I'm not going to lie, looks a little appealing to me as well. Suma, you had more thoughts on the total in this game.
Yeah, looking towards the over, I think that Caleb Williams is progressing. I'm not a film guy, not an expert by any stretch, but I feel like they are adjusting their offense a little bit. They are not doing all the zone runs and try to get more stuff through the middle of their O-line, and that has been working quite well against the Rams. And also, I feel like he's not forcing the issue as often as he did in week 1 against the Tennessee Titans. He's taking more stuff underneath. So Keenan Allen, another game removed from his foot injury. They basically have their whole arsenal of weapons at their disposal now. And the Panthers defense, I mean, outside of Clowney, like maybe they get Shai Tuttle back, but they lost both their starting linebackers. Shaq Thompson out for the year. Josie Jewell, I'm pretty sure that he's not going to play this week. At least that's what Dave Canales has indicated on Monday, I think. So this is maybe on paper maybe the worst defense in the league right now. And I think that this might be another feel-good game for the Bears, so to speak, that they can progress a little bit more. They should be able to run the ball, and they should be able to get something going through the air. And on the other side, the Chicago Bears defense has playing really, really well. The strength has been their front, but the Panthers quietly have one of the best pass blocking O-lines in the game right now. So that is basically strength on strength. Like Hitman said, Andy Dalton has done a phenomenal job so far, and I think they should also string together a few scoring drives against that Bears defense. So the only issue right now is that we are looking at wind. It has gotten better today. So the forecast was way worse, or not way worse, but it was worse in the morning German time. And now we are looking at around 15, 16 miles per hour of sustained winds. Not bad. It can still change. We are only 4 days out, but that's something to monitor. It has gotten better. But overall, I think that with these two offenses right now, Bears getting better, Panthers being much improved with Andy Dalton, I think that the total is a tad too low.
What's happening in real time right now is a great advertisement for Forward Progress. I know a lot of people watch this Bets Bet show after the fact, but there is an advantage in watching live in real time. Sometimes we call it the Suma effect here, but Suma laying out his case for the over, and a lot of market-making books steaming towards the over in real time as he's laying it out. So there is some advantage in watching real time and being able to get some good numbers. Judah, over to you here. I don't know that you have a strong opinion on this game, but small case from Hitman on Carolina. Suma likes the over. I kind of agree with both of them. Where do you stand on this one?
Yeah, I think that I probably lean, I guess, if I had to choose to Carolina. I just don't see the Chicago offense yet as the team that can really take advantage of how bad Carolina has been defensively. I mean, we even saw them. Caleb Williams threw for like 6.8 yards per attempt, which is like decent, but I think is going to be well below the regular average of a team playing the Rams. And I think this is an offense which could struggle, and just getting kind of 4.5 points. Andy Dalton, like dating back to his last season in New Orleans, has put up some of the best efficiency metrics of any quarterback. And it's like not a tiny sample. Over his last like 25 games, he's been one of the best in the NFL. And it sounds kind of crazy, but there's a pretty large gap, I think, in the quarterback play between these two teams. Obviously, the Bears have been good defensively, and I agree with Suma that it is a little bit of a strength on strength matchup here. I'm going to lay off ultimately, but if I had to, I think just looking at the caliber of offenses, I think that 4.5 is a little bit too much given what we've seen from Caleb Williams, and on the flip side, the success that the Panthers have had with Andy Dalton.
Yeah, here I come out of the woodwork saying I like a play as it's steaming in real time, but I agree with Suma on the over here. And I did talk about this with Clive on Sunday night when we were previewing these upcoming games this week. The Carolina Panthers defense, personnel-wise right now, is terrible. Now, listen, we saw the Seahawks without their front seven against Detroit on Monday Night Football. And I don't want to compare the Bears offense to the Lions. It's not. But we're talking about serious lack of personnel. I mean, Jewell and Shaq Thompson, that linebacking core was solid. Inside linebackers, those guys are gone now. We're talking about DJ Wanham on the PUP list. Obviously, Derek Brown was out earlier. It's a very depleted front seven. And you look at some of the metrics on defense for them this year, they have 10 quarterback hits through the first 4 games of the year. Like, they've given up 32.3 points on average to opposing teams. There's like more and more metrics I could go through. They're all bad. Is Chicago going to be the team that fully exploits that? No, I don't think so. But you will get a modest offensive output out of Chicago, in my opinion. We saw that last week with the 24 points against the Rams. 21 against the Colts. I think there's kind of like a floor here of low 20s for the Bears against a Panthers defense that's just not very good. And I mean, I've upgraded the Panthers offense monumentally with Dalton there. It's night and day. This is not even close to what it was with Bryce Young. You now see like the effects of Deontay Johnson getting open. He actually gets balls thrown at him and he can catch balls downfield. It's completely different. So I thought this number was low. I continue to think it's low, even as it's being bet up right now. So I'm with Suma there. And I kind of agree with Hitman as well. I'm just not quite at 4.5. I think that's a little bit too much. All right. We'll move on to our third game here. Very similar theme, I think, to some other, the first two that we covered, where it's unusual to see one of the teams in the spot that they're at right now. And this is the Commanders and the Browns. I mean, going into the year, you could have told people we're going to see a line in week 5. It's the same starting quarterbacks for both teams. It's going to be Commanders juiced 3. And a lot of people would have laughed at you. But that's where we stand right now. Washington upgraded in market a whole lot. -3, -120 at Fanduel, total of 43.5. And Cleveland continues to get downgraded. So we've seen a massive flip in this game. Suma, we'll start with you here. Large adjustment on these teams over the past week. Is it warranted, or do you think it's too much of a move?
I think it's warranted when you consider that offense is the primary factor to consider, and the Browns defense not playing close to that elite level that they were playing at last year. This Washington offense, it's hard to find any words for it because it's such a unique combination of Cliff Kingsbury really hitting all the easy buttons and grabbing every inch that the opposing defense is giving that offense. And Jaden Daniels like playing at an absurd level right now. And it's not just him like using his legs like we thought going into the season. He is really making so many routine good throws that keeps the offense going, that keeps moving the sticks. And I think that it's very hard for opposing defenses to find a counterpunch right now because Kingsbury is always going with a numbers advantage. If there's a numbers advantage to like one side of the field with his receivers, he's going to throw a screen. If there's a numbers advantage in the box, they will run the ball, and defenses have always to account for Jaden Daniels. And when he drops back, he has been pretty accurate. So right now, I'm struggling to find a recipe that opposing defenses can apply to really slow down that offense. Yes, the Browns have a very decent personnel, but right now they only rank, I think, 12th in success rate, and they have not faced juggernauts of opposing offenses. Dallas is struggling. Jacksonville is struggling. They had the Giants at home. So, and last week, Gardner Minshew quietly put together a few very good scoring drives against that defense. So I'm not sold on their defense. I will pay to see that a defense that is not playing at an elite level right now can really put the clamps on this offense. And then on the other side, we are now comparing the best offense over the first 4 weeks against the worst offense over the first 4 weeks. Yes, Deshaun Watson had an 88 passing grade from PFF last week, but overall, they are still struggling. Offensive line is a mess. Jedrick Wills, Jack Conklin, and Ethan Porchich were not practicing today. David Njoku might be back, but this is just a bad combination of all things happening. Deshaun Watson is not good. They cannot get anything going on the ground on early downs. Receivers are dropping balls, which will probably not be the theme going forward. But all in all, I'm struggling to find like easy solution to the problem for the Browns offense right now. And when you really think about it, this is a uniquely good offense against one of the worst offenses in the league. So I'm really struggling to get 3 here, and I'm higher, and I like Washington.
Judah, I've seen a lot of split opinions on this game. A lot of the arguments for Cleveland are based off of what the lines were a week ago on this game, which would have been Cleveland favored if they played. So has there been too much of an adjustment? And a lot of people are asking themselves whether or not that's been the case. What do you make of the Browns and the Commanders this week? And again, I want to ask you the same question I asked Suma. Do you think that the major change over the course of 1 week, an additional data point for each team, warrants enough of a move towards where the spread is now?
Yeah, I think it's almost absurd to like anchor ourselves to a point in time a week ago, as if like that is some like source of truth at all. Like, why not go 2 weeks ago? Why not go 4 weeks ago? And why are we going to pretend that we learned nothing in the process? I think that's absurd, quite frankly. And also, like, look ahead lines themselves are not stable. They move all the time. It's not as if this is some unique form of movement. So yeah, I mean, like and I'll talk more about the Commanders offense later on. Like, I think we have every reason to believe that if they are not going to be the best offense in the NFL, there's certainly reason to believe that they're going to be one of the best. And directionally, what's happening there is sustainable. I don't think you accidentally put up the offensive numbers that they have. I mean, this is like a historically good stretch. It's basically been the best since the 2007 Patriots by effectively any metric. And on the flip side of the ball, I mean, Suma mentioned the Cleveland offensive line is just completely reeling here. And Deshaun Watson, as it is, invites pressure. If you kind of like assign pressure to a quarterback or an offensive line at like the 5th highest rate in the NFL, he's a guy, he holds the ball for a very long time. You add on the fact that the Cleveland offensive line, which for the past bunch of years has been one of the very best in the NFL, is now giving up a ton of quick pressure as well. They're third worst in that category, and Deshaun Watson is just under pressure all the time. His disruption rate, these are plays that either pressure does not allow a quarterback to go through his progressions, or there's perfect coverage on the defense. A lot of that is a measure of quarterback processing too, is dead last in the NFL. And that's a combination of a multitude of things, but the point is that's not really changing. And Washington does have an abysmal defense, which probably will regress to the mean over the course of the season, regardless of if they're going to be bad or not. But I don't think Cleveland's going to be able to take advantage of it. They are creating so much chaos for themselves just by virtue of their own offensive mistakes that I don't think they'll be able to take advantage of the matchup advantage they have against Washington. And then you've got a really good offense going up against a pretty bad offense. And you can see how the margin would work in Washington's favor here.
Yeah, James Hudson has had to fill in on the Browns offensive line this year, and he's given up 14 pressures, 8 quarterback hits, highest pressure percentage in the entire league. With a quarterback, like you mentioned, Judah, who's had trouble processing. I will say, in defense of Watson, I thought he played better than people gave him credit for last week. They had like an 80-yard touchdown pass called back on like, I'll call a phantom penalty on the Amari Cooper touchdown. They also had a drop that was a substantial shift in EPA because it was directly in Amari's chest and bounced up in the air and turned into an interception.
I would just say there, and I think it's particularly relevant, like, I agree with everything that's said. I just don't think we understand the base rate from where that's coming from. Like, had all of those things happened, right? It's like we're talking about a team that maybe would have scored 20 points, right? Yeah. They got a defensive touchdown. Like, it's still abysmal. Like, even their best efforts have them coming as like way worse than league average.
Hitman, jump in here. It seems like you might disagree based off of your body language. Seems like we might be ganging up on you here, the odd guy out.
Well, at 3.5 was looking towards Cleveland. 3, probably not betting Cleveland, but it's just so tough for me to, like, when I was writing notes on this game and I knew everyone was going to be against me, it's so tough you can't go by any year-to-date stats. Like, you're going to get absolutely destroyed with what Washington's offense has done this year compared to Cleveland's. But I was just kind of, I just look at the roster of Washington, like maybe Jaden Daniels is CJ Stroud, and he's just going to elevate this supporting cast all season to make this Washington offense historic as they've played through 4 weeks. But it's still an offensive line that's rated 27th by Brandon Thorne, noted offensive line film guy. It's still a skill position group that, in my opinion, leaves a lot to be desired next to Terry McLaurin. And It's just, and it's a defense also that's still 32nd in EPA per play this year and 31st in success rate. It's a coaching staff in Quinn and Kingsbury. Like before the season, we were saying that not many of us, I think, had a high opinion of either one of them. Like a lot's changed with Washington. They've been upgraded astronomically, but I'm just kind of in the boat that I want to see it a few more weeks before I'm ready to lay 3.5 points in this game, 3.5 points in this game. I will admit that Suma absolutely scared the hell out of me when he posted the stat about the Browns offense through 4 weeks being similar in EPA per play to Zach Wilson's Jets. You just read that and it definitely scares you. But one more thing, a prop look potentially in this game. Jaden Daniels this year has run the most against man coverage out of all qualifying quarterbacks by like an absolute mile. Like he is number one by far running against man coverage. And we know that the Browns are predominantly a heavy man coverage defense. So just something to look for in the prop market.
I actually like that you bring that up because I was going to bring up the fact that they're likely to play a lot of man, and that really opens it up for mobile quarterbacks as well, especially on third downs. Defense has their back to the quarterback a lot. I did notice this comment. I think it's very misleading to say 0 TDs. This is for the Commanders' offense against the Giants this year because, they moved the ball at will in that. They picked up an average of like 48 yards per drive. Everything just settled in a field goal. I think that's a little bit misleading. The only thing I want to add to this game, Suma touched on it a little bit. It will be a talking point this week. And I think the talking point is going to be, well, Washington has gone up against bad defenses. And this is like their first real test. And it was a talking point for Seattle on Monday Night Football against Detroit. It was, well, the Seattle defense is no good. They've gone up against bad teams. And they gave up a lot to Detroit, but they had a lot of injuries on defense. So, like, I don't know that we actually learned anything from there, considering they were missing 5 defensive players in their front 7. But that's going to be a conversation this week. My opinion is that the Cleveland Browns defense is highly overrated. I felt like this for a long time. They beat up on a lot of bad quarterbacks last year. They had Gardner Minshew. They had Clayton Tune. They played Kenny Pickett twice. They played Russell Wilson, Trevor Siemian, Justin Fields. They really, really beat up on those teams and boosted their EPA with defensive touchdowns. This year, they've played Dallas, Jacksonville, New York Giants, Las Vegas. That's the 7th easiest schedule of opposing offenses by success rate, 9th easiest by EPA, and they're roughly around a league average defense right now. So I'm kind of like, let's pump the brakes on the Browns being this vaunted unit. Yes, they have Myles Garrett. Yes, he's going to play the rest of the season banged up, fully admitted to that. I don't think we're talking about like a runaway amazing defense. Now, I do think they're good. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to be out here and be like, oh, the Browns defense is terrible. But I suspect and expect Washington's offense to continually move the ball. And I feel like one way or another, I'm going to look back on this game at some point later in the year and be like, Rob, you're an idiot. Either Washington is just going to continue coming along on offense and the Browns can't keep up, or maybe they just come back down to earth. But anyways, a lot to talk about there. And we'll finish it off with our last game. Before we do, reminder for everyone out there, we have a lot of content for people here at The Hammer. If you're interested in learning more about sports betting, check out the Circles Off channel. We drop a weekly episode that's usually an interview with a notable person in the industry, or we cover some sort of educational topic. We got the second half of our Q&A dropping tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern time. And we actually got a new piece of weekly content dropping next week as well. So make sure you're subbed to Circles Off. If you like college football, head over to Hit the Books. Joey Knish, Brad Powers, live Monday, Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern time. Also live on Saturday at halftime of one of the marquee games in the early going. So make sure you're subbed there, and make sure you're subbed here to Forward Progress. Smash that like button down below as well. Final game we're going to cover today, before we get into futures and best bets, is the Packers and the Rams. Packers are 2-2 this year. They're actually 0-2 when Jordan Love starts. They're 2-0 when Malik Willis starts. They face the badly banged up Los Angeles Rams, dealing with injuries all season long. Packers are road favorites in this game after losing last week at Minnesota. Fanduel number -3, -115. And just looking across the market right now, pretty much every sportsbook is in that same spot. Green Bay -3, -115. Total in the game was bet up earlier today from 47.5, 48 up to 48.5 is where we stand right now in this market. Judah, I will start with you here. What are you thinking with this game, Packers and the Rams?
Yeah, I think 3.5 is a pretty big number. I think I'd still lean that direction, would probably take it. And the angle I can't really get out of my head right now is this is a Packers offense that has really oriented themselves towards the deep pass. Jordan Love, just dating back to the second half of last season and early this season as well, who's throwing deep at the second highest rate in the NFL and has had a bunch of success there in the top of most efficiency metrics. And the Rams have allowed the highest rate of explosive plays by nearly 4%. That the same gap between them and the next worst team is the same as the second and 15th worst teams. I think the Rams are not able to keep up with the Packers in the secondary. They're allowing the most separation. They're not generating much pressure at all. And these things, I think, work kind of synergistically, right? That if your coverage is bad, which is true, and also your pass rush is bad, and you allow a quarterback like Jordan Love to be able to hold the ball for 2.7, 2.8 seconds, he's going to be able to exploit you deep. And that's an area where the Rams have particularly struggled. I think on the flip side, I kind of, as I alluded to earlier, I think that the Packers defense is probably a bit overrated. I think they're like bottom 10 in most passing metrics, though they've done a great job against the run since their week 1 game against Barkley, where he ripped off a couple of big ones. And I think that in some ways, for the Rams to have success here, they're going to need to rely on Matthew Stafford to play hero ball. I don't see them as being able to get much of this ground game going. They haven't really been able to, just by virtue of their offensive line injuries. This is a pretty tough run defense, and then you're kind of just forcing Stafford into these obvious passing situations where he's been good in the past. But I think when you look at the receiving core, I mean, Jair Alexander's injury matters here a lot as well. But you really need for the Rams to stay in this game for Stafford to convert a lot of these third downs. And if he doesn't, I think we can see a pretty similar game script to what we saw in Arizona, where the Cardinals are attacking the Rams deep. And that's certainly the skill set that the Packers can utilize. And not to mention, they can also win in a different way of just relying on the ground game. Los Angeles has not been able to stop the run. We've obviously seen the Packers run game been going all over teams. I just looking at the multitude of ways in which the Packers can win, and effectively the only angle I can really carve out for the Rams staying in this game, which is like certainly possible, is Matthew Stafford just continuing to play this sort of hero ball. And I think most scenarios have this as the Packers winning this game.
So Judah likes the Packers in this one. Hitman, you were taking a look at the total. It's been bet up a little bit today, and I believe you like the over. Do you still see value with it now at the current market price?
It's a very slight lean. I had written down a lot of what Judah said about Green Bay's explosive passing game. Like, despite the fact that they didn't have Jordan Love for 2 games this year, they lead the NFL in plays of 15, 20, and 30 plus yards. As Judah said, the Rams defense is the worst in the NFL at allowing explosive plays. And also, Green Bay, as much as their offense is having all these explosive plays, their defense right now is bottom 5 in allowing explosive plays. Sean McVay has went run heavier in some matchups recently, but if you watched week 1, he went pass heavy against a pass funnel defense in Detroit. So I think that he will game plan and call plays to exploit the opponent's weakness. And Green Bay right now is second in EPA per rush allowed defensively. It's just the explosive pass plays that they are allowing. My one concern is the health of Jordan Love. Just like eye test last week in the first half, it looked like he was still not 100%. I think he spoke as recently as yesterday about still, like, I'm getting there, but I'm still not fully 100%. Obviously, he looked great in the second half, but that would just be a slight concern to otherwise a game that I lean towards the over.
All right. Suma, you had thoughts on this one as well.
Yes, I basically echo everything what these guys have said. I really like the over. I think that the Rams defense has like nothing to stop a Packers offense when Matt LaFleur is in his zone. Yes, it's concerning that Jordan Love is likely not going to be at 100%. I think that quarterback's first game of injury are always a little bit rusty, and you see a dip in efficiency. So another week should help. And I think that the Packers should be able to run the ball. And I think that receivers are going to run like freely down the field. When you watch the Bears Rams game, like Caleb had, I don't know, 5 or 6 plays where you really had receivers running freely down the field. And I think that LaFleur is like light years better than Shane Waldron. He will get more guys open underneath over the middle of the field. And Jordan Love, despite not playing that well in his 2 games this season, I think against this defense, he cannot do too many things wrong, so to speak. So I think that the Packers offense should have a really, really strong game. And then on the other side, this Packers defense has been playing below expectations. And what's especially concerning for me is that their pass rush is not up to date. So Rashan Gary is not popping up in like grading and pressure rates, and that defense also in terms of pressure rate adjusted by time to throw is not great so far. So Alaric Jackson had an injury scare, but I think McVay said that he's going to play. So if the Rams have both starting tackles, I think they should be fine and also get their fair share of scores. So overall, I like the over, and I also lean towards the Packers around the 3.
Yeah, I can't add much more here. I personally think that this total should start with a 5. I don't think the market will get there. I'm just telling you what my number is on the game. Typically, these higher totals, we see a little bit of buyback when they get steamed. I'm just speaking from experience here, so I don't know where this is going to go. But I think that the Rams defense is highly overrated right now. I think that, like, overrated. I say that correctly. I think that they're actually much worse than people really realize right now. Personnel-wise, they run a lot of cover 3. Jordan Love has been very accurate deep against cover 3 as well over the course of his career. I think that there's going to be some big shots, some big plays in this game. And if Stafford's got to go hero ball, he'll go hero ball. You got to hope that they cash in the red zone, and that's certainly going to be a problem with their personnel, but they have some issues. So, yeah, I can't really add much more there. We'll get Judah reconnected here shortly in 1 second, and we're going to get into futures bets. Before we get into futures bets, we welcome Judah back. Do me one favor, smash that like button down below. If you've enjoyed the content, you enjoyed the show, I know at least over 100 of you have been here since from the beginning right now. So smash that like button. That way YouTube knows to recommend it out to other people, even when we're done, when we're off air and it's been fully taped. So we're going futures here, guys, as we usually do every week. Hitman, you were off last week. So let's start it with you. Take a look at what was given out on the show a week ago. Not a great bet for me on Jonathan Grenard. I mean, Judah was laughing at me. I should have just listened to him. Ravens under. Sorry, Suma. That one not the greatest either. Well, looks like they weren't great bets last week. Let's remove the graphic, Jason. Thank you. Hitman, it's on to you. Go ahead.
I like Seattle over 9.5 wins. I didn't downgrade them after the Detroit game. I was actually quite impressed, especially that their offensive coordinator was so game plan specific and attacking the Lions defense, and Geno looked so good. It feels like the Seahawks of years past with Pete Carroll would have stayed stubborn in a game against a pass funnel Lions defense, ran the ball inefficiently, and had to play in comeback mode after that. But I was impressed with Seattle's offense, and I trust Mike McDonald to turn around that defense. I mean, some might say that the defense was so good for 3 weeks just because they had an easy strength of schedule and they finally met their match in Detroit. But a lot of that was based off injury. And I'm a little bit higher on Seattle than the market. So made the number 10. Give me Seattle over 9.5.
All right. Glad to see you piggybacking on all the Seattle bets I gave out earlier in the year at better prices, Hitman.
Yeah, at least I waited a few weeks to do it and not 10 minutes at a non-available line, you know.
Suma, you're up.
I'm going with Falcons under 9.5 wins. When I look at the schedule and when I consider what I saw from them so far this year, I'm struggling to find 8 wins on their remaining schedule. I also lean towards the Bucks tomorrow, so it's a tiny bit correlated. But in general, I think that the Falcons have a non-existing pass rush right now. And unless they ship something before the trade deadline, I don't think where the fix to that is. Even Matthew Judon is not playing that great this season. And on offense, Drew Delman is out. Kyle Pitts, he might actually get traded at some point because he's so bad. Like in most of the separation metrics, he's really down there at the bottom. And I don't think that this team can consistently live without a pass rush and without too many good weapons that an aging Cousins, who is clearly not at 100%, can throw to. So when I look at their schedule, I mean, even the next 4 games, Tampa Bay, Carolina with Andy Dalton is not a gimme. Seattle, Tampa Bay, Dallas, New Orleans. And so overall, I'm really struggling to see them getting to double-digit wins. So I'm going with the under here.
Okay, Judah, on to you.
Yeah, agreeing with TA here, which is always a treat in selling the Cowboys.
Agreeing with TA. This is a change of pace for you. Usually you're calling him out.
So, one Aaron Rodgers comment in week 1 sets the tone perfectly. Yeah, I think this is a Cowboys team that, especially on the defensive side of the ball, is really nowhere near the production that we've seen in the past, and especially now with Parsons set to miss a couple of games, it seems, with a high ankle sprain. Lawrence and DeMarcus Lawrence himself going down. They lost a lot of their defensive line depth over the offseason. They are allowing more separation than any other team in the NFL by a decently wide margin. That's a secondary that struggled. They've relied a lot on turnovers, which is less fluky when you have a game wrecker like Micah Parsons, but he's set to miss some time. So the defense, I think, is really struggled. And on offense, you have a team that really does not have anything outside of CeeDee Lamb right now. Jalen Tolbert, by my separation count, is I think the 3rd worst receiver in generating separation. Brandon Cooks is getting a lot older. The offensive line's a little worse. And I think when you look at them in the context of their division, it seemed like this was going to be kind of a them and the Eagles, and Washington seems like they're for real. Dallas, especially something you want to bet now. They're likely going to be underdogs in 2 of, if not the next 3 games. The long-term view of this team, I think, is really weak. A defense that, even with Parsons, has struggled a bunch and really just lacks the secondary talent. It's both on the secondary itself and the secondary weapons to really succeed. And I think this is the best price we're going to get considering their schedule in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, Cowboys fan here, and I actually agree with you. Sam points out Cooks is out. I don't think that moves the needle much anymore, to be honest. But also Isaac Samalo just got cleared for the Steelers this week as well. So looks like he'll be back on their offensive line, which will be like a little bit of a boost for the Steelers in that game. I'm going to go long shot again this week. I'm sure I'm going to get some chirps. I'm taking Jaden Reed to lead the NFL in receiving yards. Nico Collins is far and away the league leader right now. He's likely going to win this, but it's a long season. Injuries happen. You potentially get a scenario where Houston runs away with their weak division. They sit him for the last week of the year. Malik Neighbors is number 2, dealing with a concussion. I love Neighbors, but DJ can't throw downfield. One of the most inaccurate downfield passers in the league. Jaden Reed is at 336 yards, having had Malik Willis as a starter for 2 weeks. Christian Watson gets hurt again last week. What else is new? Jordan Love already loves to target Reed, but this just gives him an increased target share. His ADOT is a little bit lower this year than it was last year, but we know the Packers offense will throw downfield to Jordan Love. I think their defense is worse than people think, so I think that their offense is very reliant on explosive plays. I'm shooting my shot here, and I'm going with Jaden Reed most receiving yards.
Can I make a comment on that play, Rob?
Do I want to hear it?
Do you know how many non-11 personnel snaps Jaden Reed has played this season?
No, because I wasn't spending the entirety of my time where I could give out my pick looking at those numbers while you were.
The number is 0, and that's the same percentage chance that I'm giving that heading.
Well, there's a bunch we've given out this year that are at 0%. Although, you know what? Carolina Panthers alternate wins over is still in play. I mean, it's still in play. That seemed like it was going to be the worst bet of all time, and it has a shot. Yeah, I knew I was going to get it. I'm not incredibly proud of this one, but
just flip it when he does have the most receiving yards in the league.
It's good timing. I like to try to get guys before big games. I think he's going to have a big game against the Rams secondary. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I'm not betting these to cash out, but I'm betting them, because I think that there's some value. We'll finish with best bets here, guys. For those who are tuned into Forward Progress, tomorrow we'll be dropping a Thursday night football preview for you. That'll come midday, so make sure you're subscribed here on Forward Progress. Then tomorrow night, Thursday night football, live watch along, Bucks, Falcons. Join me, join producer Jason here as we will be going through that entire game. Tradition reigns supreme. Person who wins last week gets to go first. That was me. I'm going first. I'm taking the Bengals at home to the Baltimore Ravens. I'll start on the Cincy side. Trey Hendrickson got hurt last week. It seems very likely right now that he's going to play. He suffered a stinger. There's no nerve damage. Players don't tend to miss the game with that injury. We'll get an update on Sheldon Rankins and BJ Hill later this week, but BJ Hill's back at practice. I'd love to have one or both back on the D-line, but I'm interested in Cincinnati regardless. The Ravens are off of 2 great games. They slaughtered the Bills. They slaughtered the Cowboys. They're also just a couple weeks removed from losing outright to the Raiders at home. So, let's find the in-between point on the Ravens here, and they're being priced at the absolute top, in my opinion. I'm not going to pretend like the Bengals are going to completely shut down this offense, but I do think that they are better defensively than they get credit for. They're talked about like they are amongst the worst defenses in the league. I think that's heavily skewed by the Commanders offense, who I happen to think is very good and is going to move the ball on everyone this year. So I think Cincy's defense is closer to the 20 to 24 range than dead last in the league. But where I really like the Bengals is the offensive side of the ball. Brandon Stevens and Marlon Humphrey have been better than I expected at corner for the Ravens this year, but they've played back-to-back weeks against Buffalo and Dallas where they don't really have to worry about like a great receiving core outside of, CeeDee Lamb. These teams just don't boast multiple weapons at receiver. This is a very different matchup against Chase and Higgins. I think this is a matchup where the Bengals can have a lot of success through the air. Ultimately, it always starts with the number for me. I'm much closer to a pick 'em in this game than I am with the market pushing the Ravens out towards 3 right now. I'm taking the Bengals. What do we think of 3 minus 120, says someone in the chat. Absolutely fine with that as well, but I'm giving the number that's widely available at FanDuel right now. Hitman, you did us the privilege of not losing last week, so you get to go second.
I like Texans +1, money line minus 104 is fine. I feel like it hasn't been talked about a lot, but Buffalo came out of that Ravens game a little banged up. Deion Dawkins and Khalil Shakir, 2 of their better players on offense, are not practicing. There's questions if Terrell Bernard and Teron Johnson will return this week. Obviously, they lost Milano back in August. They're down Taylor Rapp. The defensive line is down a rotational piece in Austin Johnson. They're down Von Miller, who was the team leader in pass rush win rate. This is a Buffalo defensive line that really couldn't afford to lose many guys. They recorded a pressure percentage of 1.2%, their defensive line specifically, against a struggling Ravens offensive line. Last week, on the Texans side, they're reportedly getting Tank Dell back. I would think that Mixon probably a go, considering that he was questionable all the way up until Sunday morning last week. I know a concern always with betting Houston is the fact that Bobby Slowick is going to be running the ball too much when Houston's pass game is so good. Well, this is a matchup at least where if they do stay balanced, can probably at least take advantage of a Buffalo run defense that's dead last in yards before contact against a rush. And, I said this 2 weeks ago, and I was obviously disproven in the game against Minnesota when they got annihilated. But I could argue that Houston has the best roster in the AFC. I've been high on them compared to market. There's a lot of talk about them being 0-4 against the spread, but they had two pretty phony non-covers against Indy where they give up a backdoor touchdown. They give up a backdoor field goal against Chicago shortly after they fumbled at the 1 yard line. They outgained Jacksonville by 1 yard per play last week and won by 4, despite they spotted the Jags touchdown on special teams with a fumble at the 2 to start the game. I just think that these teams are similar power rating wise to each other, and I do not think that Buffalo should be a road favorite in this one. So give me Houston.
All right. Houston for the Hitman. Suma, over to you.
Yeah, I'm going with the Saints on the road at Arrowhead. Not a great feeling to bet against the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes at Arrowhead, but I think that at the current market price, it really warrants it. I really like the Saints in this one, matchup wise, numbers wise. I would absolutely love if Taysom Hill would play, but even without him, I would still like this number. It feels very dumb to say, but I have a few concerns about the Chiefs' offense. They will be fine over the long run. They will likely be fine late December, January. But I think that the loss of Rashee Rice will really hurt them in the short term once they or until they figure things out. Rashee Rice is really popping up in a lot of separation metrics since his rookie season. He is averaging 3.5 yards per route run this year, which ranks top 3 among all qualifying wide receivers with at least 25 routes. And Hollywood Brown could not get healthy. Now, no Rashee Rice. Travis Kelce, we are all seeing it every week, is not exactly his former self. Xavier Worthy, I really like his potential, but it's tough to predict these deep touchdown bombs every week. So I think that this offense might struggle a bit in the short term without Rashee Rice, and they have not been great with him on the field actually this season. The Saints have 4 very decent cover cornerbacks. I think that they will make it very hard on the Chiefs to move easily down the field. And on the other side, we talked, I think, every week on different podcasts on this channel about how much we like the Saints offense this season. And the Chiefs defense, Steve Spags always has his few plays that can decide a game. We saw it at the end of the Falcons game where he called perfectly timed blitzes against Kirk Cousins. But overall, the success rate of the Chiefs defense is not very great. So I think the Saints have a decent shot at scoring in this one, a decent shot at keeping it close. And I think that 5.5 points for this current iteration of both of these offenses is too much.
All right, Judah, it's on you. Bring it home for us here.
Yeah, the alt lines giveth, they taketh away also. But alluded to this earlier, I like Washington on the alts here. And I think you can look at the production metrics of a team like Washington, and certainly they would suggest that, kind of like you said earlier, this is probably the best offense through 4 games since the 2007 Patriots. But that can also be determined by certain fluky outcomes, as well as just like the teams that they have played. But what I think gets me a little bit more confident here is that if you break down some like process stats, and this is something I attempt to do, not necessarily so well, but if you look at plays where Daniels is in scheme, he's got one of the second best EPA. Again, I'm not trying to use production metrics, and if you look at the times that he, what I call, destroys a play, which is take a good situation and either take a sack, throw a ball to a non-open receiver. He has one of the lowest rates in the NFL. I actually think it is the lowest. On the flip side, if you take plays where there is this disruption, where the play breaks down and he has to create, he has by far the best create rate, which are throws to an open receiver or scrambles for positive expectancy. And in addition to that, he is also finding himself in that situation very infrequently, which I think is a testament to his kind of pocket awareness and his processing. So all of that, I think, gives me a little bit more confidence that the Daniels offense is for real. And given that, at least given that this is a Washington team that if they're not going to be as good as they've been, it is at least directionally, I think, accurate. And this could be one of the best offenses in the league. And I totally agree with everything that we said earlier about this Browns defense being particularly overrated. They have not really, other than Myles Garrett, generating quick pressure. They've basically done nothing else on the defensive side of the ball. They're below average and in coverage grade and in their rate of coverage mistakes. This is an offense that I see the ability to score a lot of points. And as I mentioned earlier, I think this is a Browns offense that is not suited to take advantage of the weaknesses in the Washington secondary. And real points, right? We use the spread as a measure of fundamental value between two teams, but there are also points in real games. And looking at it from that perspective, I think this is a Washington team that can really score a lot of points and kind of cover the spread there as well.
All right. That's going to do it for our show this week. Hopefully back on track, but maybe not. Bet responsibly, people. Bet responsibly. Before you leave the stream, drop your favorite play of the week in the comments. Make sure you smash that like button on the way out the door as well. English is my second language or something today. Make sure you check out Fanduel as well if you haven't already. For myself, Rob Pizzola, for Suma, for Hitman, for Judah, our producer, Jason Cooper, behind the scenes who makes this happen. Shana Tova, to all our Jewish followers out there as well. This has been Forward Progress, Week 5, Best Bets Edition. Everyone, good luck with your bets this week.